Hello, SHL. We're back again after skipping a week. Sorry. I'm Rich.
And I'm Akamai.
Hey, and we're back for episode 9. So we've got regular season started, which is excellent, finally. We could have talked about this last week, but since we skipped, we're going to be talking about a whole half of a season this week. We're also going to be talking about the list of top 100 players. We're actually only going to talk about like the top 5 because that's a huge list of a lot of players that I don't know much about. So that would be ridiculous. So we're just going to talk about the top 5 really quick. We got some questions from Pris, which is excellent. Thank you, Pris. We're going to do those, but not in the order I just said. So yeah, I don't know why I did that order that way, but also I need to apologize in advance because Akamai has some robot voice again this week. So bear with us, please.
Sorry, that's my bad. My Wi-Fi's crap right now.
Yeah, it's reasonable. I mean, it's not great, but hopefully it's not so bad that people don't want to listen. So yeah. So we're gonna start with the top 100 players. We're just gonna go over the top 5, talk a little bit about them. The whole list is, it's pretty ridiculous. It's a pretty massive undertaking that I actually really look forward to each season. So thank you, Argar, for that, even though I'm sure you won't hear this. But anyway, let's just go bottom, like starting with 5 and work our way up. At number 5 was Steelheads player Issa Enrikinen, the wing from Calgary, which is not a huge surprise. He's pretty consistently good. I think this is the highest he's been. Looking at his past rankings, looks like this. Yeah, number 5 is the highest he's been. And this is a little bit of a jump for him. He was 11th last season, but yeah, he's kind of a consistently good player. Good sniper, I believe, who hits, which makes him an excellent fantasy choice as well. And Calgary's a really good team, so it's not a huge surprise to see a player like his kind of consistently a top player in the league.
And of course, we'd also be remiss if we didn't mention his sponsorship of Chicken Farm.
Oh, of course, obviously.
He's practically Peyton Manning of the SHL.
Yeah. I was reading. Yeah, I mean, it's. Let's see. Over 200 hits. I mean, yeah. Really, really good player. You have any? I guess I don't really have a whole. I didn't actually play under him, but I mean, I was drafted by Calgary, so I spoke with him a few times. Seems like a really nice guy. Obviously, he has a lot of players who really love Calgary. A lot of people who've stuck around there for a very long time, and they've got a really, really good team. And I'm sure a big part of that is because of him.
Yeah, he's definitely one of the more active people, and he's interesting in that he's both active and a unifying force, which you don't always get that with people who are active on the forums. A lot of the people who are the most active, they have a sort of like love it or hate it vibe. But he's one of those people who is consistently considered to be a solid dude.
He's not particularly. I don't think he's outside of Calgary. I don't think he's particularly strongly liked or disliked. I think he's just I would say he's a good guy because of my dealings with him. But I think from looking from the outside, who people who don't deal with him or don't talk to him are just kind of like, yeah, he's just kind of there. He kind of does his thing. He's got a good team in Calgary, and that's yeah.
Yeah, I've touched on this in sort of past podcasts, I think, but he reached out to me with a really, really nice message after I had been drafted by New England and just said, hey, congratulations on going to your first choice team. That's really exciting. if we had been in a position to trade for you, we might have done that. And we certainly would have drafted you had you fallen to us, but we knew that that wasn't going to happen. So it was really, really sweet of him to reach out. And then I've also had some really positive dealings with him more recently on the updater side of things. So that has been, he's really pleasant and easy to work with. So yeah, so again, my bar for niceness is very low. But yeah, good guy. Funny when I've seen him around on the forums. So, and he really does have that sort of galvanizing leadership that I think is not just critical to Calgary's continued success, but also the league as a whole. It's people like that who can be sort of that, carry that charisma. That's really important to maintaining a healthy league. So I want to congratulate him on the spot. I think that's awesome. And I think he's a really good choice.
Yeah, I think, seeing him at number 5 is not a huge surprise. So let's go to number 4, which is, I think, kind of a similar player in terms of like the user, but I guess just, I mean, in terms of the player too, because they're both extremely high TPE, kind of have been around for a while. The players are both regressing, but not in any kind of position to be like hurting their performance significantly. It's Argar Bargar, or Alonso Garbanzo at number 4. Another really solid season for him. He's been quite good. He was at number 6 last season, so he's jumped up 2 spots. Like top tier defenseman. I think probably still the highest TPE in the league, I would guess. I'm sure he is. I'm his updater, so I think he's a little over 2K still. But yeah, I think similar to Issa in that he's like kind of a pretty well respected guy on the forums, and of course, he's a top notch player.
Has he faced regression yet?
Yes, I think last season, or I think once. I think he's had one season of regression, but he's still got like 180 something banked right now. I just updated. He's got like 100 and I think 186 banked or something crazy.
Yeah, because I think I remember looking at him, and I can't remember if this was last season or the season before, but I was doing a backup for Minnesota at one point and came across this thread, and I was like, is this a typo? Like, what's going on? But no, he just has a crazy amount of banked points. So, so I think that's not a surprise. And again, I would probably list him as one of those people who is sort of has that magnetic team-first personality. I would probably say he's a little bit more polarizing than Issa.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but he's still, I think, largely well-respected.
Yeah. Yeah, when he has stuff to say, it's coming from a place of obvious enjoyment of the league. Despite all the complaining he does on my BT threads. But so does everyone else, so it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. So yeah, and he's also, this is I guess, one of 2 defensemen in the top 5. And actually the only, like, I guess, true defenseman in the top 5. The other one being a forward playing defense. Not that really matters. It's just interesting, I guess. I don't know if it's really even worth mentioning. I don't know why I said it, but there you go. I said it.
Going swimmingly.
It's not even negative at all. I don't know why I brought it up. So yeah, I guess I haven't dealt with him enough to really like have anything interesting or to say, or like that I don't know. I don't really know Argar at all. So despite updating him, I don't really interact with him. So I don't really have a whole lot else to say. You want to move on to number 3?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Number 3 is the other defenseman. It's the defenseman who's a forward playing defense, which is Nuck, who had just a ridiculous season last season. Obscene numbers out of him, especially for a defenseman. I forget the exact numbers. Actually, I had it up just a second ago, and of course I closed it, so I don't know. But I think he was like one of the top 5 in the league for points. Let me pull it up here. He was 4th in the league for points. So yeah, he was 4th in the league for points as a defenseman. 61 points, which is a huge number. 47 assists, crazy. Plus 35, which is just ridiculous. It's absurd. So yeah, I mean, there's no surprise at all. I actually thought he might be number 2. I didn't think he'd be number 1. I thought he'd be number 2, but he's number 3. And we'll get to 1 and 2. And actually, 1, I didn't realize how good of a season he had. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself here. So yeah, Nuck, defenseman playing forward, had maybe I don't know, is a record-breaking season probably for a defenseman. I don't know the numbers. I don't know the history of scoring from the blue line in this league, so I can't really say. But I want to say he's like one of the best seasons for a defenseman ever.
Yeah, I would think so. I also, come to think of it, I'm wondering. This is also actually, like you mentioned that Argar was a defenseman. It's kind of interesting that we keep a separate leaderboard for defensemen, because, I mean, if you, I guess it still makes sense because they have to abide by the templates still. But with respect to the sim and the way we're simming with having all of the penalties for playing out of position turned off, in that sense, it's sort of, and this is not, by the way, to take anything away from Nuck or Garbanzo. They're still like phenomenal top TP earners and dedicated to their players. But I do think it is kind of interesting that I don't know, just I guess with the builds being different, I guess defensemen would maybe go more power and checking. I don't know, all of a sudden it just struck me as kind of interesting that we are keeping separate leaderboards, like that we're bothering to keep separate leaderboards for that, even though the penalties turned off.
Yeah, but I mean the behavior of the player based on your position within the sim does have an effect too, though.
It's true.
So I mean, there's I think it makes sense. It's fine. But yeah, I mean, in terms of like the difference between, and that's why with Nuck playing defense, it's not really that different from just a normal defenseman, because I believe he's a power forward, and I believe his build is basically the same as a defenseman. Like, and especially once you get up to the that top tier of TPE, you're basically maxing out everything anyway. So it's not like there's really any major difference. I mean, it's a little bit more now with the new scale, but yeah, it's really not that different, which is why a forward playing defense is a thing. But anyway, that's kind of a separate issue and not really. I don't think really important to the.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to veer us off on that.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's just, yeah, I mean, it's yes, a separate discussion, I think. But I don't. Nuck, I've had again pretty limited dealings with. I didn't talk to him too much when I was in Calgary in the Calgary locker room. Well, no, he wasn't there when I was there. I don't think, unless it was for like one season. I forget. I don't remember when I believe they traded for him. Maybe it was free agent. I don't remember. At any rate, I haven't really talked to him. So I don't really have a whole lot to say other than, I mean, he's got a great player. He's a great fantasy pick, even if he's not having an absurd season like last season, because he's a forward playing defense. So he's going to get points and he's going to have blocks and hits at the forward spot because of our weird rules. But at any rate, so he's number 3. Number 2, these are the the two players, and actually one of them I had kind of forgotten about because of the other. So at number 2 is Vlad McZ, the guy who I thought would be number 1, and the guy who made me forget about the other one, the one at number 1. But Vlad had a huge season last season. Pretty sure, let me double check, but he the league lead in points, tied for the league in goals. Obviously, there's the whole thing about him playing a ton of minutes because Manhattan doesn't have anybody else, but that's kind of whatever. It's not really doesn't really matter. The point is he had 34? I just went away from it. 34 goals last season and 69 points in 50 games, which is pretty obscene, pretty crazy by any standard,
Yeah, the other thing that was kind of interesting about that, and this was brought up by a couple people when the Nuck versus McZ debate was going on, and the argument was that McZ had so much, was so good because of the number of minutes being played. But then Nuck is also playing not a dissimilar amount of minutes. He's playing a bit less. Or at least he was. I don't know if they've rearranged lines since then. But they were both, anytime you have that top tier player, he was also they're also going to have top line minutes.
Yeah, and especially when you're looking at a situation like Manhattan where they're a rebuilding team in kind of a tough position, and they've got one really, really great player. So of course they're gonna play the heck out of him. But that doesn't take away from the fact that 34 goals is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
This is people are talking about potentially creating a new era in terms of the records, because kind of in a bit of a scoring spike here lately. So that's, I don't know, that's one thing to think about too in terms of his production versus just a few seasons ago when a 69-point player would seem not even reasonable. I guess there's been some 60-point seasons, I suppose. Even I know S22, there was a 60-point season for Morley. I know that because I wrote about him for my PT. So I guess maybe it's not that crazy, but to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players break 60 points this season or in season 30, I think there's definitely a point to be made for, or a discussion to be had about a new era for scoring for records.
Yeah, I wonder if that's a good sign in terms of the new update scale creating some more discrepancy.
Well, I know, I think it was Flacco. Crap, I forgot his username. Oh, geez. At any rate, who wrote an article, I want to say, I don't remember if it was in the off season or if it was at the end of season 30. I think it was probably in the off season, about the disparity of scoring, and it was it showed that there was a increase in scoring for the top tier players, and I think a decrease for the lower TP players. I don't remember the exact, but basically it was that the scale is separating players.
Where the middle tier players were kind of suffering a bit more.
Yeah, so it was creating separation. The scale is creating separation, but then the other issue is that we're getting these, the top tier players are scoring a lot. Like I said, 5 players with 60 or more points this last season, which is pretty crazy. When just a few seasons ago, a 60-point season would probably be the leader for scoring for that season. We've actually got, how many is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 17 I didn't count that accurately, but it's like 17 or 18 players that were more than a point per game. So, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, this is like side discussion. It's not really, I don't know if it's not really important, but the point is Vlad is number 2. He had a great season. Took a ton of shots, scored a ton of goals, had a ton of points, and was number 2. I kind of thought he'd be number 1. I don't really think it's necessarily like a huge deal that he's only number 2, because I do see the point when I look at number 1. And so let's talk about number 1, which is Banananov from the wing from Minnesota. And the argument here is he's been more consistently a top player. So whereas Vlad has kind of only been on the top 103 times, I want to say. Whereas Banananov he was number 1 in S29, number 3 in S30. And so he's more consistently good, which I can see the argument there. There's Vlad may have been like a flash in the pan, kind of one season wonder potentially. I don't think that's the case, but so that's why Banananov, I don't know if I'm saying that right. I'm just saying it how I read it. So that's why he's number 1. He had the same number of goals as Vlad, 34, which I did not realize. I thought Vlad had the sole possession of the goal lead last season, but I was wrong.
No, it was total points, and a lot of it came from his assist total, I think. Yeah,
the difference is Vlad had 35 assists, whereas Banananov only had 33. So yeah, Banananov only was 2 points behind him with 67. Same number of goals, and they played basically the same number of minutes. Bananov's played like 30 less over the course of the season, and took substantially fewer shots. But yeah, very, very similar seasons. I did not realize that until I started looking at, or until the 1 and 2 got posted. So yeah, that's, I think, deserving. I think there's an argument to be made either way. You could flip them, you could leave them where they're at. I think it's pretty fine. I'm not about to like argue with anybody about it, or if they think it's one way or the other. I think it could go either way.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm also glad I'm not the person who's in charge of keeping the list updated. So
yeah, I mean, the big argument I think, and this is more of a in terms of, because I don't think you can really argue the point production, but the big argument is Mixie kind of rubs people the wrong way, which I understand. I get it. I find him annoying too, but I'm not going to take anything away from his player for that. That's me though, I guess.
I love Mixie. He cracks me up. I know he ruffles feathers too. But I don't know. I think it depends on your personal trolling tolerance level.
Yeah.
The thing I like about Mixie is it's sort of equal opportunity, very weird patch shots. So it's not like, to me, or at least it seems to me, he doesn't have like a team or a player like target. Like, he's not like, I don't know, going out and like he chirps Kez as much as anybody. And Kez is the person who named him his co. So I
don't know, he's a weird guy.
Yeah, he's a non-bird. I enjoy him, but I know he's not everyone's cup of tea, and that's okay too.
Yeah. So I guess I have had, again, even though I'm his updater for Banananov, I've not once interacted with the guy.
Not to gossip, but how is his update thread? Is it very Mixie?
Mixie. No, I don't know about Mixie's. I do Banananov.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know how Mixie's is, but I'm sure it's fine. I mean, he's been in the league long enough. Anyway, that's I don't really have much to say about number 1, because I don't. Again, despite being his updater, don't really interact with him much. I just show up and do his updates. I don't know. Do you have anything else to say? Because that's 1 through 5. We can move on.
Nope. I think that about covers it. Congrats to the people who cracked the list. Oh, I did have one more thing, actually. And not to be a homer yet again, however, here it is. I do think it's really interesting that New England was the Cup champion with a relatively quote unquote weak roster, TPE wise.
I mean, that's not necessarily true because it's. I mean, if you look at like overall depth, I mean, we didn't have the top tier players. We've got like Russell.
Well, I guess that's what I mean.
Clayton
Is I think it's interesting that we achieved the same effect by having a couple of like instead of a single star player, we had a bunch of players who were first line like material, and then a ton of depth to the back end, and that got it done. I think that was sort of an interesting facet of New England, that we don't really have any one person who's like a TPE monster.
Yeah, and we can actually talk about that a little later because we're going to get into the regular season.
Yeah, let's do that.
So let's, I guess, okay, there's your top 10 stuff. I do need to leave a mention here for JRT because I did not realize he was number 6. That's Jedi. It's one of my guys, one of my Kelowna guys, Jedi. Congrats on number 6, buddy, even though you probably won't hear this. I think that's
we mentioned you. We said this nice thing about you.
Yeah, I just needed to. I didn't want to leave that out because I'm sure he won't hear it, but if he would, I'm sure he'd say something. So there you go, Jedi. Number 6. Good job. You're the best. Well, you're 6th best, but whatever.
A late stab.
So let's go to the questions, because I think that's next on the list. Because Pris asked some last-minute questions. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Pris.
Yeah, it's very much appreciated. Gives us something else to talk about rather than having to just talk about the regular season, which may be a little boring. So, all right, first question from Pris. Is Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews, or Patrick Lane? I'm like the worst person to ask this because I don't pay attention to NHL. Yeah. I know about Austin Matthews' first game. I know about that, so I know that much. I know that Connor McDavid is quite good, and I've heard the name Patrick Lane, so there you go. That's my answer.
Excellent. Yeah, I don't. For me, nothing against Lane. I just don't know him as well. I don't actually even remember where he got drafted, so that sort of knocks him off the list. Austin Matthews, awesome first game. 4 points with a Hattie in a first game is insane. So good job, kid. Household name status in a single game. But I think if the question is phrased as like a pick one sort of thing, I have to go McDavid just because I think I really respect the way he's handled the sort of the pressure and the hype of trying to be the savior of the Edmonton Oilers, which is a nightmare in itself. Whereas I think Matthews is spreading a little of that glory out with Marner and, oh my God, who else do they have? Oh, Nylander. Nylander isn't a rookie this season. It's his second season. I don't think he played a full season last season either. So this is like his first full season. So yeah, that would have been a tougher question if it had been one of the other Leafs for me. I'm really fond of Marner, and of course Nylander. And I actually, even though he did not get his call up, and he's not technically as good as the others, I guess. Kasperi Kapanen is my homeboy. I really like that kid. So, and that's not logical. I just like his nose. That's it.
All right.
Sorry. I don't know. He's a cute nose. Whatever.
Okay, that's fair, I suppose. Okay, so yeah, there you go. I have nothing else to add to that because I don't have a clue. So, next question.
Okay.
Thoughts on the latest Thunderdome thread? And I'm assuming you're talking about Sammy because he's a clown and is drawing attention to himself unnecessarily by being a clown. So we're gonna go with that, I guess, right? I don't know. It's just Sammy. He's like he has no ability to like. It's like he has no breaks. He just if he gets an idea, he just does it. And this is like maybe the third thread, or it's at least the second thread he started in the
Oh God, I think it's
Thunderdome for just nothing, just nonsense.
Because
Because
kind of bad because I was like,
no,
I'm
this is
sure he would have
third.
figured it out eventually, but we were talking in the Knights Discord at one point, and he was complaining about something or other for the longest time, and I was like, my phone is blowing up with how much you are complaining, kid. Like, sit down. So I was like, if you wanna complain, why don't you take it to the Thunderdome and actually that's where anything happens or gets done. And I meant it jokingly. I never actually go into the Thunderdome for any reason. So, but he was like, "Oh my God, what's the Thunderdome?" And then went to investigate, and so at least one of those threads is my fault directly. So I'm sorry for unleashing our Baby Knights Ricky on all of you.
This is I checked. This is his third Thunderdome thread. So
Oh, Jesus. Good to know we have a new shit posting king.
yeah. He's just easily excited and doesn't I don't know. And I guess you had said this when we were talking off air, but I guess he's quite young.
Yes.
Is definitely a factor. So there's that. So yeah, he's just
he's a hot mess.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, this was clearly harmless. I don't know why people actually there's it got derailed almost immediately. So yeah,
as happens.
Yeah, but I mean, but the reality is, it is going to hurt his draft stock being kind of clowny like this. And there was a mention of that in the Knights Discord. That some GMs are already saying oh, we don't want to deal with him because he's kind of I don't know, whatever word.
I mean, I would think some people would find that more attractive that at least he's active.
He's definitely active, and actually quite a bit more active in the Discord than he is in the forums. So, and less, I would say, less obnoxious in the Discord, because if you consider posting in the in the Thunderdome obnoxious, which I kind of do, it's just but yeah, he's totally fine. I mean, he's just a excitable kid. He's probably if he sticks with it, I think he'll have a good player, because he's definitely kind of got that desire to have a good player. He follows The Sims very closely.
As 4-4 will attest to.
Yeah.
Sorry, 4-4.
Yeah. So I mean, there's not. I don't really have a whole lot to say other than just I mean, we keep telling him to just chill out in the Knights Discord, but yeah, he's excited. So I don't know. There's not a whole lot else for me to say, I guess.
Yeah, I know. I keep picturing him as this dog, this really excitable dog that someone needs to take out and run around the yard a couple times and then bring him back in the house.
Yeah.
Okay, are you gonna sit now? Are you good?
Just gotta get him to burn off that energy so he can go to bed or whatever.
Get out of the Thunderdome, go home.
Yeah. So yeah, it's he's harmless. He's just kind of dopey. It's fine.
Okay. No, he's a nice kid.
Yeah, no, he's totally
not
fine.
A mean-spirited bone in his body. He's just really super invested.
Yeah, and he's very, I would say, I don't know, very is an exaggeration, but he's open to, suggestion or criticism, constructive not criticism. I don't know. He's asked for help and he's received it and received it well. So. Yeah, I don't think there's any real issue with him. It's just he's a kid. being a kid.
Yep.
So let's go next. Yeah. What have you thought of this season's PTs so far? Do y'all like them? So my last week was a bad week for me. I did not do last week's. I did not do PT number 2. I missed a prediction even. That's just like completely unlike me. But I think, I mean, I don't really care what the PTs are that much. I hate to be that guy who I'm going to do them. I don't need them to be like, oh, this is an awesome PT, or this is, I mean, I will be slightly annoyed if it's one that I don't like, but for the most part, I don't really care that much. I'm going to do them. The seasons have been fine. I haven't had one where I've been like, oh, I hate this. But I'm not the kind of person who's gonna be like, sweet, this PT's awesome. I can't wait to do it. It's just, I just do them. I did kind of like, and this is like, I kind of like this last one, number 3, because I already kind of knew what I was going to do. Because when I first joined the league, one of the first players I did see that it was like a top tier player at the time was Brian Morley, Ragnar's player. Because I came in at like S24 when he was kind of in his like prime scoring, because like S23, S22, 23, and 24 were like his 3 big seasons. So that was like one of the first players that stood out to me. So I just kind of took that and used that for my player Lundberg. And it just so happens that Morley's like listed height and weight are very, very similar. His height's the same. His weight is slightly less than what I used for Lundberg, which is just a coincidence, kind of a happy accident. So I was able to work that into my PT. So it's kind of nice.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I actually did not even think about including that, but that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of one of the things with my player. He's a power forward, but he's an undersized power forward. So it's kind of a thing with him. It hasn't been a huge part of like what I've written about him or anything, but it's a thing. It was a choice I made consciously to make him slightly undersized. Because that kind of contributes to the whole kind of hard work type of player that I want him to be. He's small, but not so small that people are like, you can't play, but small enough to where it would be mentioned as he's undersized kind of thing. Be like a little sticking point for him. It was like, might drive him to work harder. So yeah, I kind of liked that. It just worked out well for me because I remembered that very specifically when I joined the league, that I had Morley. So I don't know. What about you?
Well, this is kind of a funny question for me to answer because I'm on the PT team. So I know one might say that Jay is the PT dictator, and that would be absolutely false because I have so much input regularly, which I enjoy, and is part of the reason I like being on the PT team. I like that it's kind of an open forum for, hey guys, what do we want to do this week? And I don't think, I think it's not something that people necessarily consider, that it's tricky to come up with ideas that are new and fresh every week. We similarly don't want to give people PTs that are stale or too difficult or something that they don't want to do. We don't want them to be boring. So we try really hard to strike a balance, and there's lots of things that come into play for us when we decide what we're going to do. We try as best as we can. We try to balance between sort of character-based narrative and stat-based narrative. We know there are people who very strongly prefer one over the other. So Jay and I run towards more character-driven stuff, just because that's who we are as people. We both write as a hobby. So I think for us doing it's more compelling, I think, for us to be able to connect to our characters of this hockey child through PTs. So I do think that's where a lot of that comes from. But we also know that there are some people who really like to dig into the stats and stuff. So each season, we try to do at least one stat that's a little more well-rounded in terms of one PT that's a little more well-rounded in terms of using statistics. So we do try to give people that option. I know we also always do one for championship week. We're careful to include a stat one in there because we know that A, we know that some people really enjoy it, and B, championship week is a good opportunity to do sort of a little mix of everything. So if you have one in there that's stat based, that sort of gives people who've not really been into hockey stats that much or worked with the sim statistics before, it gives them an opportunity to go and explore that. And I think that exploring the sim is a big part of what makes the SHL so compelling. Argued the other way, people who aren't at least a little bit character driven don't really stay. Just because there is like the media aspect of it means you're either going to be graphically involved or sort of character focused, and I think that's one of the things that makes the SHL kind of special in terms of hockey leagues. Is it's not a traditional fantasy hockey league in that sense. You have a lot of control over what you do with your player. So anyway, as someone who consistently has input on PTs, yes, I generally do like the ones we put out there. We have a ton of behind the scenes Discord discussion as a PT team on what we'd like to do and some things we'd like to include. Something that is new for this season is the PT idea hat. We've wanted to encourage more contribution from viewers like you. we've wanted to give the league more input on what we do for PTs. And that's coming from multiple places. One, we really do want people to have a good time. And there's so many creative people on site that, of course, there's going to be a couple people who have really new and fresh ideas. Not this season, but last season, 3 of the PTs were based from an idea I kind of threw in the ring. And out of one of those, one was actually an idea I had tweaked from the very old suggestions thread. That one in particular was the advertisements PT. The sponsorship PT, where you're supposed to pick a sponsor or brand for your player. So we try to keep it. We try to keep it interesting. I will say that I think it's been kind of a struggle this season. I'm really thankful that we got the ideas started. I really liked PT2, which was Crutchfield's idea, but for PT2 and 3 specifically, I know we had a lot of trouble, getting them done on schedule, getting them posted on schedule. Jay has been traveling in America, and I have been doing a lot of swim team related stuff, so we have both been really, really busy and down to the wire in terms of getting them up and posted and proofread. So I think there's been, for 2 and 3, there were a couple instances where the instructions were not as clear as they could have been. And I feel bad when that happens, because that's really something as a PT team we should be better at, sort of avoiding that ambiguity. The last one in particular, PT3, was mine, and I should have been more clear about what the requirements were. But it is what it is, and we, each one we take behind the scenes. I've talked about this a little bit before, but we're trying to come up with a handbook. So when we get sick of being the PT team, we can hand it off gracefully to somebody else with hopefully very little, dip in quality from the change of hands. So we're trying to come up with all of the pitfalls that we've had so far, and leave them as notes for people ahead of us to say, okay, these are the things that you want to be really careful to include. Have your grading deadline and your actual due date be in different colors. That was a good suggestion we got. So this has gone way off topic. I'm so sorry. I'm really tired. But yeah, I've really enjoyed them, and I'm grateful to people who have been submitting some really interesting PT ideas. So please continue to submit them. We do actually compile them and read through them. We have one that's a request for a statistics-based one that I know that we're looking at doing something with at some point. We just have to condense it into something that's not too hard for people who are new to statistics. So we're working on it. Please, if you have input, that's what our feedback box is for. There's the suggestion box. We take stuff from that as well. So if there's something, if you'd really like to see more of one thing or less of another thing, please do let us know. And with the caveat that if you complain, now we have a place to direct you to say, hey, if you didn't like our PTs, here's the idea hat, submit some. Don't be too lazy to come up with some, but then criticize us for what we create. So anyway, yes, I like them.
All right. So yeah, that pretty well covers that question and more.
Really long. I'm so sorry.
No, it's totally fine. So let's move on to the next one. So if you could have drafted any single rookie to the Wolfpack that you weren't able to for whatever reason, who would you take and why? Okay, so my kind of top hopeful choices, and this is coming from a position of not having to GM, so I don't care about position because I know we needed defense. But the three that I wanted most that I didn't think we would get because they weren't defense, but would have been, number one would have been Pris, Pietro Volkova. Number two, and 2 and 3 were probably kind of the same, really. So just two number twos would have been, oh crap, I'm blanking. Alex Light Zune, one of our Kelowna guys. He's a good guy. I like him. He's actually the captain this season. I wanted him, but he's another wing, which we don't really need. And the third would have been Trevor Wilson. Would have been another great one, I think. I like both those guys. Both are Kelowna guys. But yeah, we needed defense, and I'm not a GM. So yeah, but those were the ones I would have liked. Why? I mean, with the two Knights guys, I don't know them really well, but I'm in the Discord with them. I know they're good guys. I know they're building good players, and I expect them to be active. The same with you, Pris. You were quite active, very good player. So I mean, there's not really much else to say about that. But I didn't think, obviously you're one of the best. You were one of the best draft picks in the draft class. That's the other reason you're going to be very likely a very good player. But yeah, there you go. That's 3 for me.
Okay.
You have any?
Yeah, and they're going to be overlapping. So, first of all, I would have loved to have more of my Lululemon. Oh my god, that was a mess. Let's try that again. More of my Luluminati people, starting with Pris, obviously, because I love her. But I would have loved to have Boz, and again, we didn't need a goalie, so we weren't going to be able to take her. But if this is just a personal list of who do you love and would have loved to have had, she definitely goes on the list. I went to the Caps game with her this yesterday, and it was awesome. It was so much fun. It was really great to meet her, and we're going to Caps Open Skate tomorrow. So I'm really excited about that too. But she's an angel, and I wish we would have been able to take her. Shout out to my super active Kelowna kids. I definitely, for sure, would have loved to have Zune and our fashion twins. I would have loved to have Twills and Tweeds with us too. Back in the day, I was absolutely crushed that we sort of weren't in a position to take justice. And that was just a matter of pimp-wise and where we were. But I was disappointed that he didn't. I know he loves West Kendall, so it's all fine. But if we're just looking at who did I want, and then this is going to be super obscure and a person that has since gone inactive and no one knows about. So in that sense, I feel like it worked out fine. But Tapper Copepool is hockey
yeah,
on the
hockey
site.
Scrabble, yeah. I remember.
She was playing for the Firebirds for a while, but I know her offsite, and I absolutely adore her. She's one of my favorite people on this earth. So I'm glad that she went to the Firebirds because that was her first choice, and that was where she wanted to go. She signed with them as an FA, in fact, I believe. I was not able to. We actually just simply weren't in a position to be able to sign her either, I think. But anyway.
I think that was when myself and Lil were still the GMs, I believe. I'm pretty sure that's right. But I didn't actually make contact. I'm pretty sure Lil handled it because
we knew her already.
Yeah, because the connections. So I think that's how that went down. I don't really remember too well, but I do remember wanting to try to sign her in free agency.
Yeah.
Actually, I kind of screwed up this question because it's any single. We're supposed to just use one, but I couldn't. I mean,
I wasn't going to pick just one. So.
Yeah. That's too hard. That's too difficult. Also, I don't want to. I feel bad leaving people out. But yeah, if it was only single, I probably would have chosen Pris. Yeah.
I also, and this is also kind of an out there choice. I would have loved to have taken Boom. Boomcheck, his Cornell halfback, because Boom.
He would not have been happy on New England though, because he loves to shine.
Yeah, no, he wouldn't have. So in that sense, I'm happy for him that he went to Hamilton. Apparently, he was really deeply hurt by me telling him that Hamilton was the Cleveland Browns of the SHL last week, and no one would want to be there. So I'm not going to take it back because it's true. Sorry, Boom.
He's just enjoying himself, and his players playing well. So,
but yeah, he's he would not want anyone to know this, but he is one of the softest people on the site, secretly, completely in secret. He's so nice, and his heart is really in a good place, and he has been reaching out to teammates to try to get to know them better, and I think that is one of the sweetest things. So he's a sweetheart. He doesn't want anyone to know. Oh, and speaking of sweethearts, also these are my other rookie faves. Is it Toman or Tommen?
I don't know.
I think it's Toman because I think I asked him if it was Tommen and he said no. So
that's how I think that's how I'd say it if I was guessing. Yeah.
So anyway, T-Dog. Deeply enjoy him as a person, and Zach Evans from Detroit, love him. I wish we could have taken him because he's fantastic. That said, I'm really, really happy with how our drafting and trade situation has gone. Kless is one of the weirdest people I have ever met, and I love him. He's such a weirdo. And I mean this with nothing but the absolute fondness and deepest respect. But Kless is Ryan Bass for the militia, and is just super odd. He's like the new Mixie. But he is the sort of person who, when I am like, guys, no one's asking me questions on my presser, come ask me questions, he asks me 11 and includes a GIF. So I just appreciate him a lot. So I'm really happy about that. Toivo has been super quiet. I feel bad because I feel like we kind of scared him off.
He's been around. He's been around pretty regularly, but
he's been on off. I say this, he's literally online right now. Anyway, he's just quiet. He's like Rich, a sneaky presence. We'll come in and drop the truth bomb and then wander out.
I'm always here.
So yeah. So I really enjoy both of them. I'm glad we were able to take them. And then I think everything else, I think we're good. I know we were looking at picking up Pris at one point. And I think that would have been a solid choice too, but he's also, it sounds like, being absolutely swamped by real life, so.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, I have so many rookies, and I love all of them. And basically, as soon as I update you and you're nice to me, you become my actual child. That's how it happens.
All right, well, I guess, all right, fair enough.
So I have 100 children.
All right, well, let's do the last question, which is actually we're going to kind of roll into the regular season discussion here, because the last question is going to be, which teams do you think look most promising for the playoffs in the SHL and SMJHL? Well, to start with, I don't think we should cover both leagues because I don't think we're going to have time. But let's start with the SHL, and if we have some extra time, we'll look at the SMJHL. All right? Does that sound fair?
Super.
Okay. All right, so...
Plus, I guess it's something to talk about for next week.
Yes, yeah, there's that too. So let's look at, right now, just real quickly, we'll look at the standings for the SHL. Do you have it up?
Yeah.
Okay, let me make sure that it hasn't simmed, actually. I don't think it has since we started. Nope, doesn't look like it. Nope, okay. So right now in the West, we've got a little bit of a surprise with, although it's a very kind of tight grouping in the top 5 in the West. But right now, Seattle at the top, followed by Texas, followed by Edmonton and Calgary, and then Los Angeles, Portland, Winnipeg. But if you look at the actual point numbers, so right now Seattle and Texas are tied at 33 points, and Edmonton is just 1 point behind at 32, and then Calgary is just a few more back at 29. And then outside of the current playoff picture, we've got LA with 28. So you've got 5 teams all within, 5 points of each other. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a pretty tight conference in the West. So I still think that Calgary's the best team there. Whether or not they end up on top, I don't know. Texas is playing really well, putting up a ton of points. But Seattle is apparently winning close games because they don't have a really great goal differential, but they've got those 33 points, so you can't really argue with that. And then Edmonton, their goals against is the best in the league right now by a pretty decent margin. So they're playing excellent defense and putting up points. So they're very good as well. I stand by the Calgary number 1, Edmonton number 2. I think that'll probably be how it shakes out by the end of the season. But yeah, Seattle and Texas looking really good, and LA is right there. So if I was betting, I would still put Calgary 1 and Edmonton 2, and after that, I'm not sure. Thoughts?
Yeah, the only question I still have is how hard Calgary is getting hit by regression.
I don't think it's that bad for them. I mean,
I don't think it's that bad, but again, the West is pretty elite overall. So I'm sort of wondering, like, if you're looking for a factor to say why aren't they atop the division right now, I'm kind of wondering if that has played a role at all.
Maybe. I mean, it's hard to say. Texas got off to a really hot start, so I think they're going to probably taper off a little bit. Seattle, I guess I didn't notice until just looking today to see they were first. But I know Texas kind of was. I think Texas was first for a while in the West. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I haven't paid close enough attention to the West because we're not in that conference, so I don't really follow it as closely. But yeah, it's very competitive, which is really really good to see, especially after, in my mind, Calgary and Edmonton being like the clear favorites. So it's nice to see that it's closer than I would have thought. So
Yeah, I think it's healthy. It's healthy for the league when you've got when you've got that kind of closeness.
yeah, I mean that's where the interest is at, is like who's going to win, who's
Right, who's on the bubble.
Yeah.
Because it's way more fun when you have a team who's on that bubble. I guess two teams technically. Are we going to stay in? Are we going to knock them out? Those sorts of questions are what keeps interest alive mid-season. So I think anytime you have that kind of array of very narrow differentials, it's fun to see things change. It's fun to see the standings stacking up week by week and see sort of what changes over the course of the season.
Oh, actually, here's an interesting thing to point out, and I just noticed this. Calgary has 2 fewer games played than all the other teams above them in the West currently. Everyone else has 26. Calgary has 24 games played. So,
interesting.
Yep.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good. You're good. I was done anyway. Actually, it's fine.
So yeah, I mean, there's it's tighter than I expected, but I mean, as far as which teams are in the playoffs, I think that seems about right. Or currently, of course, we're at basically the halfway mark of the season, so this is just if the season were to end right now, we'd be looking at Seattle, Texas, Edmonton, Calgary, which I think is the 4 I would have picked.
Yep.
LA is still to me just a little bit outside. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're actually playing better than I would have expected. But yeah, they're right there. And then of course Portland is still a little ways back, and Winnipeg is kind of the wild card. I think in my mind it was the GM turnover. It was hard to say how that would go, but I think the expectation is that they would probably struggle, and they are. I don't think I would have put them doing in kind of. Are they dead last? They're not dead last. Hamilton's dead last. But they have the worst goal differential, and they don't have the most goals against. They have the third most goals against. So it's not actually that terrible. They're just not scoring, and that's a problem. But anyway, let's go to the East because we are running out of time. So as of right now, we've got Toronto in first with 38 points. We've got us, New England. We are in second with 36 points. After that, you've got Minnesota with 28, West Kendall with 26, and then the 3 that would be outside right now are Buffalo, Manhattan, and Hamilton, in that order. Except Buffalo is only 1 point back from West Kendall, and that's the biggest surprise to me. Obviously, I expected Buffalo to do better this season, but my surprise is that West Kendall is they're not terrible, but they're only at 500 for 12 wins, 12 losses, 2 overtime losses. They're not as good as I would have expected. I guess that's probably they are not doing great for scoring. Not terrible. I don't know. Their goals against is not great either, though. So they're kind of like I guess probably the goaltender transition because they're still playing. Lost the name. Lewis Flood. There we go. Yep. So I guess that's probably, if I had to guess, that's probably why they're giving up a lot of goals. Because their scoring is actually fine where they're at. They've got 78 goals for, which is kind of middle of the road in terms of like where they would fall, I think, in the rankings. But their goals against is 72, which is, in terms of teams that are in the playoff hunt, is among the worst. So yeah, I think that's probably the issue there. Toronto, though, Toronto is playing really well. Although up until this most recent sim, we were ahead of them. They pulled ahead. We had a couple of losses, like our last 3 games have all been losses, so we fell back a little bit. Minnesota, kind of as expected, still scoring a lot. And yeah, West Kendall is to me the biggest surprise here in this group. I think those are the 4 that I think I picked Manhattan to keep playing well because I thought their goaltending would not be worse this season somehow by picking up Ty, but somehow it is. Somehow they're getting they're not scoring as much and they're giving up a lot more goals this season. So not sure how getting I'm not sure how upgrading your goaltender position by like 500 TPE somehow makes you give up more goals, but it does for them. So yeah, so they're the team that is a bit of a surprise to me to be out. I mean, yes and no. I mean, I guess if you look at their roster, you would expect them, but my surprise for them last season made me think maybe they'll be on the edge of the season and they'll make it again just because they'll score a lot. But that's not the case. So yeah, in the East, teams outside Buffalo, Manhattan, Hamilton, Buffalo could potentially jump up, but I would expect West Kendall to improve. I don't think they're going to get worse. And I think Buffalo's doing probably as much as they can. So I think the East probably stays about the same. The top 4 might shuffle around a little bit. Not too much because you got us in Toronto kind of a decent amount ahead of Minnesota and West Kendall. But I think those 4 are probably the 4 that'll make the playoffs. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you covered most of it. I too am a little bit surprised that West Kendall isn't doing marginally better. But I don't know. One thing I do think is interesting is if you pull the overall standings, that tight cluster in the West is making the overall sort of interesting. You've got Toronto and New England is solidly dominant in the division, and then you've got Seattle, Texas, Edmonton, Calgary, that sort of tight little cluster right there. And then Minnesota and LA are actually tied for points total ahead of West Kendall. So if you were looking at it as, okay, let's imagine that instead of West and East, it was a single top 8 period, then West Kendall would actually be out of the picture by 2 points. And again, it's 2 points. It's not a lot. But it's only 1 ahead of Buffalo. And it is so I think that's something that's sort of interesting. And it's LA, I know, has been in kind of a tough spot because their division has been so much more consistently even and good. So I think it's really only sort of just now that the East is becoming it's equal.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be interesting to see the trend. If Buffalo had stayed, had continued its improvement trajectory, if Hamilton had not had the complete turnover and collapse, then I think it would have been a lot more interesting. I think the East would have been potentially closer. But as it happens, they are in the middle of a hard rebuild and not in a position to climb out of the deep hole they're in anytime soon. Though, as Boom is so fond of reminding me anytime he gets a point against us, they're still scoring some points. They're just not doing a whole lot.
Yeah. So I think overall for me, I don't really see. So the question was most promising for the playoffs. So I think the way the standings are at right now is, I think, what we'll see in the playoffs, I would expect. I can't see Calgary's still, I think, substantially better than LA. I think that's the kind of a anomaly right now, is that Calgary's doing as poorly as they are. Yeah. So I think by the end of the season, this will probably be what it looks like. Maybe not necessarily in this order, but I think these will be the 8 teams would be my guess. Certainly, the possibility of that changing, but in my mind, this looks like how it's going to go. So as far as who does well in the playoffs, I think the 2 best teams. The 2 best teams in the East are going to be us and Toronto. So I think us, New England, and Toronto are probably the 2 most likely to be the team representing the East. As far as the West, right now, I think Edmonton is very scary. Calgary is just not showing enough to where I can have any confidence to pick them to win the West right now. Even though I still kind of maintain that they're the best team, they're just not performing. And the way Edmonton's playing defensively and as far as goaltending, that's scary for anybody. So I think Edmonton would be my choice to represent the West currently. Do you have any thoughts?
Not tremendously. I think it would be kind of a cool upset. I don't think it's actually going to happen, but I think it would be kind of a cool upset if Buffalo came up ahead of either Minnesota or West Kendall. They're not that far back where it's completely out of the realm of possibility. But on the other hand, I think in all likelihood, I think that where we are now will pretty much be where we are at playoffs in West and East. I think it would be interesting to see Toronto sort of break their cup drought. I think do they have the player with the next longest cup drought after Hippos got broken?
I have no idea, but I would imagine. I mean, if I had to guess, that would be my guess.
The longest.
Yeah, the organization certainly, but as far as like the player, it would seem likely, but I don't know. That would be cool. That'd be an interesting outcome to the season to have them finally get their cup. I'd rather we won it, but it'd be cool to see Toronto win it too. I think the matchup for me right now would be New England, Edmonton again. You got the highest scoring team in the league and the best defensive team in the league.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Honestly, I really like playing Edmonton. I like the group of people.
Yeah, it's a good group. It's got a few of my teammates from my S24 draft class. It's got Jedi as the GM. It's just a good guys, and I would not have any problem with them winning it. And they're playing at a very high level, and of course, Brett Broadway is killing it right now. So, that's kind of where I'm at. Do you have any final thoughts, or do you want to call this or bring this to a close?
I don't think so. I think let's wrap it up.
Okay. I guess I didn't really have a a good idea of how to close this out. So we're just going to cut it off there. Thanks for listening, everybody. That's the end. We'll probably do this again next week. Hopefully we've got some questions. We're going to touch on the SMJHL next week because we did not kind of ran out of time here. So we will get to the SMJHL, that second half of Pris's question, which teams do you think look most promising in the playoffs for the SMJHL? We'll get that next week. Also, honestly, it'll give me a chance to look because I really have not been paying attention.
Bam.
So we'll catch you next week. Thanks for listening, everybody. We appreciate it. Sorry for taking a week off. I hope that doesn't hurt our number of listeners too much. Not that you could do a whole lot of damage to the 10 people or however many. We will catch you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Sajal.